I watched my own son drop something into my drink at my retirement party. And the funny thing is, I almost laughed. 36 years I spent running into burning buildings. You'd think that's the part of my life that would kill me. Turns out, it might have been a glass of bourbon poured by my own boy at a party thrown in my honor. My name is Charlie White, 70 years old, retired fire captain, city of Tulsa. 400 and some house fires. I stopped counting after 300. Same way you stop counting how many times your knees pop getting out of a chair. 2 heart attacks, both mine, both survived. Doctors tell me I've got the stubbornness of a man twice my size. And one son, Dennis, 39 years old, standing across the table in a suit that cost more than my first truck. A truck that, unlike my son, never once tried to take something from me. Smiling like I raised an idiot instead of a firefighter. If you're watching this, drop the city you're in down in comments. I want to know how far this story travels, because where I'm from, we don't forget what family does to family. The banquet hall was at the DoubleTree off Riverside. Maybe 80 people packed in. Guys I worked with for 3 decades, half the department, my old chief, a few city councilmen who like to be seen at these things. Dennis organized the whole event, booked the room, picked the menu, even hired somebody to make a little slideshow of me pulling kids out of houses back when my knees still worked. "Dad," he said, clinking his glass with a fork, "get up here." I got up. My knees complained. They always do now. Dennis put his arm around me in front of everybody. 36 years of service, he said. My father ran into places grown men run out of. I used to think he was invincible. He paused right there, like he'd practiced it. Turns out, he's just the toughest man I know. Real nice speech, I'll give him that. The boy could sell a screen door to a submarine. He's been talking his way out of speeding tickets since he was 17, and apparently that skill grew right up with him, because these days he's selling houses to strangers he can't even afford one himself. See, here's what nobody in that room knew except me. Dennis is drowning. Real estate flip gone bad. Some development deal out past Broken Arrow that ate up money he didn't have. I found out 3 weeks ago by accident, going through paperwork he left at my kitchen table. Man owes close to $180,000 to people who don't send friendly reminder letters. And the only thing I own that's worth that kind of money is the duplex on Yale Avenue. My duplex, paid off in 1998. The one thing keeping my retirement from being a diet of canned soup. He'd asked me about it twice already. Real polite, real casual. "Dad, ever think about simplifying, maybe putting the duplex in a trust, my name on it, just to make things easier down the line?" I told him no both times. Told him I built that with 30 years of hauling hose up ladders, and the only trust I'm interested in is the one where he trusts me to say no a 3rd time if he asks again. He laughed when I said it. Should have known a man that desperate doesn't laugh because something's funny. He laughs like that right before he tries it a different way. The waiter set a bourbon down in front of me. Dennis had ordered it special, said it was my favorite, which it is, and I appreciated the gesture right up until I watched him glance around that room like a man checking for a fire marshal before he lights indoors. I've spent my whole life reading rooms. You learn it running into buildings where one wrong read gets you killed. So when my own son's eyes did that little sweep, left, right, back to me, I knew something was wrong before I knew what. His hand moved fast, practiced fast. Something small and white dropped into my glass and dissolved before the ice even had a chance to notice. I didn't flinch. 36 years of staying calm while a roof's about to come down on your head. That kind of training doesn't leave you. I just sat there, looking at my own son, thinking, "Son, I've walked through smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hand, and you think you're going to slip something past me under fluorescent lights?" "To Dad," Dennis said, lifting his glass, all smiles, all warmth, playing the loving son for a room full of people who believed every word. "To the strongest man I've ever known." Everybody raised their glasses. I raised mine too, and I smiled right back at him, warm as church on Sunday, because I already knew exactly what I was about to do next,
and drinking that bourbon wasn't anywhere on the list. A man doesn't survive 400 house fires by walking into the one his own son set for him.
Here's the thing about a man who's pulled bodies out of burning houses for 36 years. You learn to move slow on the outside while your hands do the fast part. I picked up my fork, let it slip right out of my fingers, and bent down after it like my knees needed the extra second, which, to be fair, they did. Under that tablecloth, in about 2 seconds flat, I swapped my glass with his. Same bourbon, same ice, different poison. He never saw it. Man was too busy soaking up applause to watch his own hands. "Clumsy old man," I said, coming back up with the fork. "You all right, Dad?" Dennis asked, not even looking at me, still riding the high of his own speech. "Never better, son." He lifted what he thought was his glass, the clean one, mine, and I lifted what used to be his, mine, now loaded. We clinked. Whole room clapped again. I took a small sip. He drank his like a man proud of himself. Let me back up, because you need to understand how we got here. 3 months ago, Dennis started showing up to Sunday dinner asking questions he'd never asked before. About my will, about the duplex, about whether I'd thought through what happens to my assets when I'm gone, like I was already halfway there. I chalked it up to a grown son finally growing up, taking interest in the family's affairs. That's what a father wants to believe. 2 months ago, he brought me a stack of papers, said it was a simple trust arrangement, said his lawyer buddy drew it up for free as a favor. I read 3 pages and handed it back. Papers like that don't get drawn up for free. Somebody was paying for it, and it wasn't going to be me who benefited. 6 weeks ago, I found out why. I was fixing his gutters. Man can sell a house but can't clean his own rain gutters, and I saw mail on his kitchen counter I wasn't supposed to see. Collections notices, 3 of them. Different companies, same amount owed, over and over. $180,000, give or take, tied to some land deal out past Broken Arrow that went belly up 18 months ago. He'd been floating it on credit ever since, robbing one card to feed another, and it finally caught up. I didn't say a word to him, just filed it away. That's the fire captain in me. You don't run into a burning building without knowing where the exits are first. 2 weeks ago, his wife Renee called me, real quiet on the phone. Said Dennis had been staying up till 3 in the morning researching something on his laptop, closing the tab fast when she walked in. Said he'd been short with their daughter, snapping over nothing. Said something felt wrong in that house. I told her not to worry. Told her Dennis probably had work stress. I lied to her because I didn't have the full picture yet. Now I do. Back at the table, about 15 minutes after that toast, I watched my son's hand start to shake around his water glass. "You feeling all right?" I asked him, same easy tone I'd use asking about the weather. "Fine," he said, but his voice had a wobble in it that wasn't there 5 minutes ago. Sweat showed up on his forehead, right along the hairline, the kind that has nothing to do with how warm the room is. Renee put her hand on his arm. "Dennis, you don't look good." "I'm fine," he said again, sharper this time, and pushed his chair back like he needed air. He didn't get far. 2 steps from the table, his legs gave out from under him like a man who'd just run out of floor, and he went down hard right there in front of 80 guests, his old fire chief, 3 city councilmen, and his own father.
The ambulance got there in 9 minutes. I know because I timed it out of pure habit. 36 years of running toward disaster does that to a man. Makes him count things other people don't think to count. They loaded Dennis onto a gurney while half the banquet hall stood there, frozen with drinks still in their hands. Renee rode with him. I followed in my truck, alone. hands steady on the wheel the whole way to St. Francis, which is a thing I noticed about myself and didn't much like. A father's hands should shake a little when his son's in an ambulance. Mine didn't. The waiting room at St. Francis smells the same as every hospital waiting room I've ever sat in, delivering bad news to families whose houses I couldn't save fast enough. Bleach and vending machine coffee. I sat in one of those plastic chairs built for nobody's comfort, and I thought about the fact that I'd just watched my own son drink poison meant for me. And somewhere in my chest, underneath 36 years of training myself not to feel things on the job, there was a father who was scared for his boy anyway. That's the part nobody tells you about revenge. It doesn't cancel out love. It just sits right next to it, ugly and uninvited. Renee found me around midnight, her makeup gone, her hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup she wasn't drinking from. They stabilized him. Whatever it was, they got ahead of it. He's going to be okay. Good, I said, and I meant it. That part surprised me too. Charlie, she sat down next to me, and something in her voice changed. The doctor said, he said whatever was in his system, it wasn't something a person accidentally swallowed. It was measured out, deliberate. She looked at me. Somebody put something in a drink tonight, and Dennis was so insistent you take that bourbon. He picked it out special. He made a whole thing of it. I didn't answer right away. 40 years in a fire department teaches you that silence is sometimes the loudest thing you can offer a person. Renee, I said, finally, I think you already know the answer to what you're asking me. Her face did something I won't forget. Not shock, exactly. More like watching a house she'd lived in her whole life quietly reveal a room she never knew was there. They led us back to see him a little after 1 in the morning. Dennis was propped up in the bed, IV taped to the back of his hand, looking smaller than I'd seen him look since he was about 9 years old and scared of a thunderstorm. The confidence that sold houses and delivered toast speeches was gone. What was left was just a tired man who'd made a bad bet and lost it to himself. "Dad," he said, voice cracked from the tube they'd had down his throat earlier. "I need to tell you something." "I'm listening." He looked at Renee, then back at me, and something in him broke loose. "I put something in your drink. I was desperate. The money. I owe people who don't wait around for payment plans, Dad. These aren't banks. These are people who send other people to your house when you're late. I thought if you had some kind of episode, a stroke, something, I could get power of attorney, sell the duplex to cover it before it got worse for all of us. I never wanted you dead. I swear to God I never wanted that. I just wanted it to look bad enough that you'd let me handle things." Renee made a sound like the air had been knocked clean out of her. "You were going to drug your own father to steal his house." "I wasn't going to steal it," Dennis said, weak and desperate. "I was going to save us all." I looked at my son lying in that hospital bed, and I thought about every ladder I ever climbed, every door I ever kicked in for a stranger who needed saving. Every time in 36 years, I put myself between somebody and a fire because that's what you do for people. And here was my own blood planning to burn me down for a duplex on Yale Avenue. "You know what the worst part is, Dennis?" I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "I would have helped you. All you had to do was ask me straight. I've bailed you out before. I would have found a way again. But you didn't come at me like a man with a problem. You came at me like an obstacle." "Dad!" "I'm not finished." I stood up, knees aching, same as always, and for the first time all night, I let him see exactly how tired I was. Tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. "You almost killed yourself with something you built to hurt me. Sit with that a minute before you say another word." Renee was already reaching for her phone, and I understood exactly who she was calling. Not a lawyer, not a doctor. The police. 2 officers showed up at the hospital 40 minutes later, and I gave my statement in a private room down the hall, while my son lay handcuffed to a hospital bed rail 2 doors down. The same boy I taught to ride a bike, to tie a hose knot, to say his prayers before dinner. Detective on the case looked at me and asked one simple question. "Do you want to press charges, Mr. White?" I sat there a long moment, thinking about the duplex, about 36 years of running into fires other people ran away from, and a son I loved enough to forgive almost anything, except this. "Yes," I said, "I do."
Word travels fast in a fire department town. By the time I got home from the hospital, my phone already had 6 missed calls and a text from my old chief that just said, "Charlie, call me when you can." The story hit the local news 2 days later. Not the whole story, just enough. Tulsa man charged after retirement party incident involving father. They didn't use Dennis's full name at first, some legal formality about pending charges, but everybody who mattered already knew. Small town dressed up as a big city. Everybody at that banquet hall had a phone, and a phone has a camera, and somebody's cousin's coworker had already posted a shaky video of Dennis going down at the table, captioned with 3 question marks and 100 comments guessing what happened. Dennis's real estate office let him go within the week. Can't sell trust and home ownership to strangers when your own name is tied to a headline about poisoning your father. His broker called it a mutual decision. Wasn't mutual. I know a firing when I hear about one secondhand. Renee moved out with their daughter into her sister's place over in Broken Arrow, close enough that the girl could still finish out her school year without changing schools on top of everything else. I don't blame Renee one bit. A woman finds out the man she married was willing to drug his own father over a duplex. She doesn't owe him the benefit of the doubt anymore. She filed for divorce 3 weeks after the hospital. Quiet, no drama, just done. I went to 2 hearings, sat in the back both times, same way I used to sit at the edge of a scene waiting for the all clear. Dennis's lawyer tried to paint it as a man under financial duress, no history of violence, first offense, begged the court to see it as a moment of desperation rather than a character. The prosecutor read Renee's statement out loud about the collections notices, the late-night research, the months of pressure about the duplex. I watched 12 years of my son's life get summarized into a folder of evidence, and I felt that same old ache I used to get standing outside a house I couldn't get to in time. Between hearings, Dennis reached out. One letter, handwritten, delivered through his lawyer since he didn't have my current number. I'd changed it. 7 pages, all apology, all promises, all the things a desperate man says when the walls are closing in and he's finally run out of angles. I read it once. I didn't answer. Some things you can forgive in your heart and still know you can't let back into your house. The hardest day was the plea hearing. Dennis stood up in that same gray suit, thinner than I remembered him, and pled guilty to assault with intent, reduced down from the original charge through a deal his lawyer worked out. The judge, a woman about Renee's age, looked at him for a long moment before she spoke. "Mr. White," she said, "you targeted the one person who raised you at a celebration of his life's work for financial gain. This court doesn't take that lightly." 2 years, eligible for early release with good behavior. Dennis didn't look back at me when they walked him out. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe some part of him still had enough shame left in him not to. I drove home that night to a house that felt too big and too quiet. The same house where I taught that boy to ride a 2-wheeler in the driveway, where I sat up with him through fevers and thunderstorms, where I never once imagined I'd be planning a future that didn't include him in it. I sat on my porch a long while that night, and I thought about the duplex on Yale Avenue, the thing he wanted so bad he was willing to burn down everything else to get it. I thought about selling it, starting somewhere new. Somewhere that didn't have 36 years of memories tangled up with the worst night of my life. By the time the sun came up, I'd made my decision. I sold the duplex on Yale Avenue 4 months after the sentencing. Ironic, maybe, that the thing Dennis tried to poison me for, I ended up letting go of anyway. Not because he took it from me, but because I didn't want to live inside a memory that painful anymore. A young couple bought it. First house, 2 kids and a dog. I stood in the driveway on closing day and watched their little boy run across the yard I used to mow every Saturday for 30 years, and something in my chest finally let go of it. I took the money from that sale, added it to my pension, and I bought a small place outside Sand Springs, about 25 minutes from Tulsa. Just a house, 1 story, a porch, enough land for a garden I never had time for when I was working. No memories baked into the walls yet. That was the whole point. My days look different now than they did on the department, and different still than they did the year after. I get up early out of habit. You don't lose 36 years of 5 a.m. alarms just because you retire. I make coffee, sit on the porch, and most mornings I don't think about Dennis at all, which surprised me the first time it happened and doesn't surprise me anymore. 3 mornings a week I volunteered down at the fire station in Sand Springs, mostly just talking to the young guys, telling them the things nobody tells you until you've already made the mistake once. How to read a room, how to know when something's wrong before you can say what it is. Funny, teaching that skill to strangers after it's the same instinct that saved my life at my own retirement dinner. I made a friend out here, a widow named Carol, who runs the community garden 2 lots down. She lost her husband to a heart attack 6 years back. No drama in it, no betrayal, just life ending the ordinary, sad way most lives end. We talk over the fence some evenings. She doesn't ask about Dennis, and I don't offer. Some things a person doesn't need to carry into a new friendship. I heard through Renee, who still calls me now and then, mostly for her daughter's sake, that Dennis got out early. 16 months served, good behavior, some program for financial counseling he had to complete as a condition of release. Renee said he's living with his own father, my brother, out in Owasso, working construction now, no real estate license left to fall back on since the state pulled it after the conviction. She said he asked about me, asked if I'd ever consider talking again. I told her the same thing I've told myself every day since that hospital room. I don't hate my son. Hate takes more energy than I've got left to spend, and I spent enough of it that first year to know it doesn't fix a single thing. But love and trust aren't the same animal. I can forgive a man for what he did to survive a hole he dug for himself, and still know I'm not the rope he gets to pull on to climb out of it. Sometimes sitting on that porch in Sand Springs, watching the sun go down over land that's mine, free and clear, land nobody's ever tried to poison me over, I think back to that banquet hall at the DoubleTree, 80 people clapping, my son's arm around my shoulder, and the small white pill dissolving into a glass of bourbon I never drank. 36 years I spent walking into fires other people ran away from. Never once thought the one that would test me hardest would start with a toast and a smile from my own boy. But here's the thing. A man who spent his whole life reading danger before it reads him, you survive it. You grieve what you lost, you forgive what needs forgiving for your own peace and not for theirs, and then you build something new on the other side of it, out past Broken Arrow, out past Yale Avenue, out past every place that ever tried to burn you down. I'm 70 years old. I've buried friends, survived 2 heart attacks, run into more fires than I can count, and lived through the one thing I never trained for, my own son trying to take me out of my own story. And I'm still here. Coffee in hand, porch light on, garden coming in nice this year. That's the whole story. Not every fire ends in ashes. Some of them just clear out the dead wood so something better has room to grow.